Hi, my name is Rodrigo. This is Ethan, where we teach and elevate the Bible using digital media. And today we're continuing our series on how to study the Bible. On our last video, we looked at how biblical poetry is an effective and efficient way for the biblical authors and for God to communicate very deep things to us and things that are supposed to permeate our lives. That being said, knowing why the biblical authors and God use biblical poetry is one thing, but really understanding how to read biblical poetry is another, which is why on this video we're going to talk about how we're supposed to read biblical poetry, and we're going to begin by looking at the structure of biblical poems. The first thing to understand about the structure of biblical poetry is understanding how the verses are laid out. So imagine that each one of these white lines is a line of text in a poem. The interesting thing about biblical poetry is that they don't lay out verses the way that we do, because to us, one line is one verse, but in Jewish poetry, two lines make up one verse. So in this case, this would be one verse, and this would be another. What's even more interesting is that these lines are related in meaning or in idea one from the other. So this line is related in idea to this one, and this line would be related in idea to the second one. How these lines are related one to the other is called parallelism, and parallelism comes in different forms. There are three types of parallelism: synonymous, antithetical, and synthetic. And in just a second, we're going to look at what each one of those means. Synonymous parallelism is when the second line in a verse restates in a different way the thought of the first line. An example of synonymous parallelism is Psalm 9:9. The Lord is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. The second line is expressing the same thing as the first line, just in a different way. In antithetical parallelism, the second line expresses the same as the first, but in a negative manner. An example of antithetical parallelism is Proverbs 10:1. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is a sorrow to his mother. The second line is making the same point as the first line, just in a negative way. Synthetic parallelism is when the second line complements the first by clarification or explanation. An example of synthetic parallelism is in Psalm 9 verse 10, and those who know your name put their trust in you, for you, O Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. Very simply, line 2 expresses why line 1 is possible. Understanding the structure of poetry helps us understand the meaning of poetry. But structure and meaning are just one part of knowing how to read biblical poetry. The other part of reading biblical poetry is that whenever we see it in the Bible, we ought to know that God is trying to communicate a lot of deep things to us. Therefore, more than just understanding the structure and more than just understanding the meaning, what we're supposed to do with poetry is meditate on it. Meditate on it so that it can become not only something that we read, but a part of who we are.